So I'm back from vacation. Sorry about that. I come back to Poland, the first thing I do is get sick.
Who cares?
Sorry about the voice, guys. Dr. Mike...
You were
not the only thing you vacated then.
Dr. Mike, I'm pretty sure I have the coronavirus. What are the symptoms?
Being sick. The rest of us are going to be like locked up in incarceration.
I'm pretty sure I have it.
Have you got a lime slammed in your neck?
I feel terrible. Guys, before we dive into the news, which is the point of our meeting, can I go on, Dave? Can I go on an aside for a minute? That I think you're going to join in enthusiastically with this.
You kind of did. I'm picking my nose.
I really enjoyed my holiday.
I'd stick with that one, Dave. It's
very relaxing. But on the way back, I lost about a good half of the relaxation and the good vibes simply because of the trip itself. Do you agree with me? I think you do. But do you agree with me that air travel is the most stressful thing ever?
No.
Come on.
I'm just saying, right? I fly a lot, and my thing here is, get your fly face on, get your game going.
There's something about air travel that brings out the stupidity in people that drives me insane.
I fly with my son quite regularly. I've flown on my own with him a few times. I'm lucky he's a good flyer because he's done it a lot. So I've never had any really bad experiences flying. I mean,
my first
I'm not saying it's my favorite thing in the world.
My first act as president will be to instruct NASA to tackle this problem of what causes people to look at their boarding pass, either in row 3, and then choose to get in the line at the back of the plane, thus screwing up everything. That just drives me insane.
Oh, John, I have to agree with you.
Thank you.
I've been flying as I was a little kid, and I just remember people being more organized also back in the day, in the 80s and the 90s. Now it's just like a cattle being steered into a flying freight train or something like that. And also, it was just a lot more pleasant back then. I remember, the pre-9/11 days when you would walk up to the gate, everybody was smoking. It was like chillax, whatever. Say hello, goodbye, almost walk you onto the plane. And
stupid Bin Laden.
Sorry, John, but as a representative of the powerful KrakCast media organisation, surely you turned left when you got on the plane anyway, is it?
You turned right.
I was in first class all the way. Yeah, absolutely, for sure.
He's already got his hand cocked, waiting for a flute.
Well, what just adds to the stress for me. What adds to the stress for me is more valuable than real estate in central London and in Tokyo and Manhattan. More valuable than gold itself is space in the overhead luggage bin. That's the most valuable thing on earth, and I'm obsessed with getting there first. How horrible is the feeling of getting to your seat and realizing that somebody somewhere has taken your overhead space with their luggage? It drives me insane.
Well, actually, I have to say
Very
something.
Stressful.
I only really fly Ryanair. That's my jam. So they introduced a policy recently, recognising that there's not enough space on these planes. There's about space for 90, about half people to put their kind of 10 kg bag overhead. That's the maximum capacity on board.
People bring the weirdest things.
So now on Ryanair,
spare tires and refrigerators and
right. Ryanair solved the problem, okay? So there's 90 seats that can buy priority boarding, which comes with a 10 kg capability to put in the overhead bin. Everyone else has to check the 10 kg case, and you can only bring on your laptop or whatever.
You can't do that on transatlantic flights.
A seat in front of you, yeah.
This works quite well, actually, because this problem used to drive me nuts. I'm bringing my 10 kg bag. I don't want to wait a baggage reclaim on the other side. I want to do it all in one go, get out straight out to departures. But actually, you know what? The speed they bring the bags through these days is phenomenal.
Oh, it's awesome, yeah.
Amazing. It used to take forever. You used to be at the carousel wondering would your bag ever come out but now it's always there 5 minutes after the plane lands.
One more. I know this is the news, people. We're going to get to it in just a minute, I promise.
Check your bag.
Let me go around the room really quickly and get short answer to the following question. What is your position, so to speak, on putting your seat back on an airplane?
Well, Ryanair don't even allow you to do that.
No,
all right, let's talk about a real airplane.
Only evil people who I really hope end up in hell try and claim that space from his fellow man.
Well, I think it's a bizarre thing anyway, because it really doesn't make any difference to your comfort whether you can move the seat back a few degrees.
No, and it makes me resent you forever.
It's just like a little assertion of hey, I can put my seat back. And do you know what? I know that it's just going to even mildly piss off the person sitting right behind me.
More than mildly.
One of the most unpleasant journeys I've ever taken in my life was with my dear wife from our hotel in Egypt in Hurghada all the way out to the pyramids, which is a very, very long drive, which the drivers have arranged to stop at every petrol station for a little brown envelope and so you can buy some watermelon or whatever. And it was just the most torturous journey ever. And about 5 hours in, the dude in front of me decided to snap his seat right back in my grill. And I was like, I'm not in the greatest mood ever, and I'm not going to finish that story because I was not pleased.
Okay, so how does that compare to, say, the 4-year-old sitting behind you who decides that kind of his percussion practices needs kind of like
I think putting your seat
updating.
back is worse.
From a fake movie, I went like this: "Dear sir, could you kindly arrest your development there?"
Well, I agree with you, Dave.
No, I didn't.
If you put your seat back,
I don't believe that for once.
if you put your seat back, especially if you sit in front of me, you are a horrible, horrible person.
The seat back, I think, is only acceptable in a couple of scenarios. I mean,
If you're dying,
Mike, you always have
no,
to tell.
not
Oh no, you
acceptable.
got too far, this Mike.
not acceptable at all.
well, first of all, we're not talking the narrow body 737s or the A320s. You don't put your seat back then. We're talking long haul flights overnight where everything quiets down, the lights are out, there are no meals being served. You put your seat back, the person behind you puts the seat back as well because we're all sitting at a slightly different position.
So if we all do it at the same time,
Pretty much, yeah, because then we have the same amount of space. We're just at a different angle, so it's a little bit easier to try.
I will
much-
accept
too much
that.
to
I will
coordinate.
accept that. I will accept that setup and scenario.
And you got
Only, Michael, if it is not possible to pull the seat down during daytime hours. Okay, if it's like timed, if you can do it right in the dead of night, to go asleep, okay, I could live with that. But anything else and you're evil.
No, you have to be aware of this, situational awareness. And as soon as, the meal's coming around, the lights turning on, you
put your goddamn seat up.
back up right away.
Yes.
I mean, it's part of the etiquette. It's the same thing with if you're in the middle seat, you get both armrests. And if you disagree with me, you are horrible.
So actually, just a small question. Sorry to interrupt, but do we have some news?
This is the news. It is. Isn't it? Yes. Welcome back, people, to the news. Lots of talk about this week. So many subjects. I don't see a common thread that unites them. So let's just kind of bounce around from one subject to another. Let's start out with.
You kind of say something like that every week.
I do, don't I? Well, sometimes I don't.
Well, he's
but
been
most of the
away
time
for
I
a
do.
couple of weeks, so let's give him
That's
a
true.
little bit of slack.
Again, sorry about my voice. I know I sound like I'm
Are
sick.
you sick? You hadn't mentioned it.
Because I'm sick. Yeah.
Coronavirus, he's dead.
John's sick, everyone.
Let's start.
Squeezing
Dr. Mike,
that
let's
bubble
start.
wrap.
Has an
Speaking
illness.
of the airport and airplanes and air travel, let's start with Krakow's own airport. Dr. Mike, something we mentioned before in the news. Last time we mentioned it, it was a proposal. Now it's moving forward. That is a plan to build a new runway at Balice Airport.
Yes, this is true. And why it's in the news right now is the fact the city council has basically decided to vote on a resolution to support this construction to basically send over to Warsaw to
And it
say
passed,
they're back.
overwhelmingly it passed.
Yes, it was only a fraction of people not supporting it, a fraction of council members. Because of understandably, people living within the vicinity of the airport don't like the idea of a new runway in a new position being constructed anytime soon. But the thing is, that airport's been there for decades. People building their homes around there knew it was an airport. So you should be aware of the fact that it's going to be louder. It's not going to get quiet.
We don't feel sorry for them.
Yeah, I mean, I understand their pain, but protesting against this obviously needed infrastructure improvement.
Sorry, just clarify, is this a second runway or a new runway?
Actually, this will be a new runway because the airport needs a runway of higher standards. If they wanted to renovate the runway they have right now, they would have to shut down the airport for several months.
And a Costa and a McDonald's, please.
Sorry?
It also needs those things.
Dave's dream of having McDonald's at the airport.
And a Starbucks, yeah. And a sombrero.
Well, the food options there are shit, to be fair.
Yes.
Not that McDonald's is a huge improvement, but okay, whatever.
It would be, though. No, but if they wanted to renovate the current runway, they would have to shut down the airport for several months. That's just not feasible. It's just not acceptable. So they want to build a new runway, which would be, wider, longer, with all the new, radio lantern, technology.
The best runway.
Best runway, huge runway, all the runway, and allow them to land in. There's our pilot.
Yeah,
there.
good timing, Dave.
In foggy weather or snowy weather to let them safely land.
You mentioned fog. When I was coming back here last week, I was in Frankfurt, had a morning flight in Frankfurt. The fog in Frankfurt was really bad, more than enough to close down completely the Krakow airport. The problem here is not only the condition of the runway, the problem here is the radar equipment they have. That is that I don't know the technical definitions and descriptions, but in Frankfurt, bigger airports,
Primitive, I think.
they can take off in thick fog, and here we can't because we don't have the right
basically
equipment.
blind. It's
That's the problem here.
It's AWS. I forget what the acronym was. It's a radar system which provides a glide path for planes to come down, and it's almost automated. If the winds aren't bad or anything like that, the plane could land itself and starting as well. But unfortunately, Krakow Airport doesn't have the highest standard of this. And this is another thing. They want to build a new runway which would allow for these new systems to be introduced to allow year-round landings and takeoffs to take place no matter what the weather conditions are.
By the way, we were making fun of we were criticizing the food options at the airport here. I was just there last week again, and I saw it upstairs. There's a couple of like lame bistro bar things, and in huge letters by the seating area, it says EAT. But the bottom part of the E is obscured by chairs, so it looks like FAT.
It's a good name.
Well, that's the size of your wallet if you want to order anything there.
That. Okay. Well, we'll see. Well, by the way, any kind of projections on when we might expect work to start on this runway?
Oh, if it goes through in the parliament and they get the funding, it probably won't start for at least at the end of 2021.
And how do you build a new runway and still use the existing runway?
That's part of the construction work.
Sounds this like a logistical challenge, to say the least.
The new runway will be located at a slightly different location from the old runway, so it's several hundred meters away. This is why people living there are protesting, because all of a sudden the runway will be closer to them than it was before. I mean, they were still right next to the airport anyway.
Clever people will make intelligent plans.
Talking of kind of like amusing kind of like obstructions or kind of enhancements to kind of lettering, there's that, you've probably seen that image going around of like Andrzej Duda, our beloved president, kind of campaigning. It's a picture of him sitting there in a suit with a white shirt, and the letters, big letters, Duda, in front of him, and the D in the middle of Duda coincides with the white shirt of his, where his suit jacket kind of splits, so that it looks from first glance like it says Dupa.
Ta-da!
Which, of course, as every well-informed expat knows, Dupa is the Polish word for president.
Yes, exactly. Let's move on to some other national news this week. Tragic news, actually. 3 people, all 3 members of one family, a mother and 2 daughters, were killed when the roof of the building they were in was ripped off by storm winds, Dr. Mike. Tragedy, obviously, but it's kind of resulted in another story, related story of a kind of a crackdown on building codes, especially temporary buildings in areas associated with the winter ski industry.
Yes, exactly. Because this building was actually just a trailer, truck trailer, like that was covered with wood paneling to look like a building, and it had a few pieces of like metal structure, whatever, to extend the roof. So when you're walking up to, because this was actually a building to rent ski equipment from, when you're walking up, you'll be covered from the snow falling.
Extension of the roof.
Extension of the roof. And the strong winds we had the other week caused it to fly off. It hit this family, a whole family, a son, a father, 2 daughters, and the wife.
Horrible.
All the daughters and the mother were killed. Actually, 2 of them died on site. Another one died a few days later in hospital. And a lot of people, this is, like you were saying, they've decided to start inspecting these buildings. The thing is, regulations beforehand will basically say that any building put up for temporary reasons, like at a festival, at some kind of carnival, at an event, that were not subject to the same kind of regulation requirements.
Like building codes and inspections.
Yeah, it was expected.
Like that,
so if it was under 6 months, it didn't have to fulfill these standards. And this thing was built, like I said, a trailer with wood paneling.
And there are tons of buildings that are set up just for the winter season, right?
I think that's what freaked everybody out so much. I mean, apart from the utter tragedy of it, it's just so random, isn't it? It's the kind of thing you think, oh God, like any time you can go.
It was a gust of wind and they're dead.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of things that were a little shady about this whole construction, though. It wasn't built on actually the land of the company that was running the ski trail or the lifts. It was a separate company that was just on the border there that rented that land, that hired that land from a farmer who technically on that land you weren't allowed to construct anything. It was farmland, agricultural land. So, if he rented it out to anybody, it would have to be for growing crops. But no, he was renting this out for this other purpose the last 2 or 3 years. And this building, which was supposed to be temporary only for, in the wintertime, put up for 3 months, had been there for 3 years, just being only used in the wintertime. So it seems like a lot of rules and regulations were being broken. So now the powers that be, with this event having taken place, have decided to start inspecting all these buildings.
What happened in, Bukowina Tatrzańska, or near there, and I think that's in Podhala, and the government authority just for that voivodstvo, just for that region, says that there are probably hundreds of such buildings just in that region alone. So nationally, this would be, presumably thousands of buildings that are suddenly need to have another look.
Think about all the food trucks here in Krakow.
Food trucks, yeah.
Those are basically the same kind of style of building. It looks solid enough, it looks fine, but it's actually not built there to be permanent, so it doesn't have to fulfill all these legal requirements to be safe to that full extent. I mean, and most people, when you look at those kind of buildings, you think like, yeah, I know this, nobody's going to live there. I don't expect it to survive an earthquake.
But one strong wind out of nowhere can, result in a tragedy like this. Horrible, horrible news. Let's move on to something else. Dr. Mike, before we started recording, you were kind of explaining this to me. I find it really interesting, but I didn't really know how it worked. VAT fraud has long been a major issue in Poland, draining the national treasury of billions, literally billions with a B, of dollars and euros, let alone zlotys. And this week, the government announced that they had arrested yet another ring that was specializing in a certain kind of VAT fraud. Take us through kind of like the recent history of VAT fraud in Poland, how it works in broad strokes, and the connection with Poland's status as a major exporter of cell phones.
Yeah, I'm glad. Well, VAT tax fraud, I'll be honest, it's one of those things that I read over and over and over again, and I still kind of only understand it. Simply
I think this is one of those things, if you don't do it yourself, it's kind of hard to understand how it works.
Basically, VAT tax, value-added tax, is a type of tax which increases on a product or on a substance as the product is being improved. So, I chop down wood in a forest, there's a certain amount of tax on that. I sell it to a company that turns it into furniture.
You're adding value.
You're adding value, so the value of the tax is added. And that furniture is, say, the part of a set in Ikea, the value is added on as well. And the final consumer is the one who pays the full tax on it. While everybody in that chain beforehand has that tax deducted and basically sends in their invoices to the government, and the government pays them that money. And the way the VAT tax fraud works is that you have a chain of companies, and this works when the chain of companies are in separate countries, basically sell products between each other, where technically this product is, for some reason, the value is added onto it, so the tax rate is increased, and then each one asks for the invoices to be sent back, and the guy at the beginning then sends to his local government saying like, okay, I need the return of all these taxes that I paid, because
then it disappears.
And then it disappears. And a lot of these companies just pop up for a moment, disappear, and these taxes are paid, it's an automated system. You send in your invoices, everything looks fine, and then you get your check.
That was a fucking impressive sentence.
So like in a very, very brief kind of like summary, kind of like you're claiming back tax that you've supposedly paid, but in fact you've never ever paid. And
because the next company over is also faking the invoice.
Right, yeah. So actually the government is kind of, it's not just like avoiding paying tax, it's actually getting money back.
And this is something that people really don't understand with the VAT carousels. It's not that the people are not paying taxes, they're actually defrauding the government to get money back. And some people are saying, like in Poland from like 2005 to 2015, that the VAT tax fraud could be on the line of like over 200 billion zlotys.
So cases like this are important. It's the spokesperson from the Special Services Coordinator, Mariusz Kaminski. He's talking about these fictitious sale transactions in steel, zinc, lead, aluminium. The goal of this carousel was to hide the VAT. So it's great that they're taking these guys down, but is this just a trophy hunt to kind of keep this on the agenda, or are they actually making headway? Can we get any reliable kind of data on how well Peace have done on improving the take on that?
Well, a lot of people say that one of the main reasons Peace has been doing so well in the last couple of years when it comes to their budgets is the fact that they kind of close off these loopholes and scared off people from actually using these systems.
Plausible, but growth of the economy can account for
growth of the economy, but they were able to basically every year when whoever in government decided, this amount of billions would go back.
You're right, they do
taxes.
say that. That's what I'm saying. Like, is there anything? I don't know the answer. I mean, but it would be interesting if we could find some kind of reliable data to say what was being collected before this government took power, and proportionally with the growth of the economy.
I mean, it's not a matter of collecting; it's the fact that they weren't paying out.
Well, they were, and it still amounts to the same net. But kind of
net, yes. But the concept is the opposite. And the thing is, apparently they'd be paying out less of this VAT returns than was expected over the last decade or so. And
guys, surely this can't be just a Polish thing, Dave. Ireland, Josh, UK, sure, every country has to do with this.
The border in Ireland is famous for fuel VAT scams.
Girls locking with butter in there.
And you're right, it is complicated. I was listening to this dude, this mafioso guy, explain a fuel VAT scam in New York, and Greater New York. I mean, he was making like millions a week. It was unbelievable, the scale of it.
And going back to what John was saying, this was basically because of these statistics about fictitious sales of products. There was a moment when Poland was the largest exporter of mobile phones in the world, because they were, apparently buying mobile phones in one country, selling them in Poland, and reselling them to another country in the Czech or to the Czech Republic. Mm-hmm. So technically, Poland was exporting hundreds of millions of cell phones, like in the late 2010s.
On paper only.
But the system kind of has to work that way. So say you open a business and you put 150 grand into it, you build up a big tax VAT credit, and you can either cash that in or you can leave the credit there, and all your profit, you don't pay any VAT on it till you go and you cycle back through that. That's why that kind of system exists, But I mean, it's also what economists call a self-collecting tax, and it generates an enormous amount of government revenue for very little administration, actually. So it does have a lot of advantages as well.
I mean, the idea of the VAT tax kind of makes sense, because if you're producing a product, you want to declare to the government that you produce this product and you pay this amount of tax because you're expecting to get it back. But the thing is, I don't know if this is true. You're more into like the taxation economic thing. I heard a lot of people that thought about introducing VAT tax said, like, this would be a great way to get rid of income tax and other taxes.
Yes, but that's what they always say. You never get rid of taxes. Yeah. The government spend always goes up because the people always demand more services and more, goods off the government.
Well, I mean, the classical kind of like economist's view is that VAT is a regressive tax because it's a consumption tax, mm-hmm. and
tax vacant land and that.
Well, yeah. Well, there's the whole thing about like land value tax is a whole other story in itself. But
that's where that school thinks the money should be raised.
Well, I mean, the thing about supposedly the thing about regressive tax is that they impact particularly heavily on those on lower incomes, because they still have to buy stuff. And
you could say it's the only tax they pay, though. Usually it is.
Well, no, that is also true. And in fact, I mean, it's one of the things that gets kind of missed out of a lot of calculations in terms of how much tax you pay, because you might think, well, okay, I've got income tax at a kind of marginal rate of like 30% or whatever. Mm-hmm. Oh, and there's national insurance, okay, which is kind of a tax by any other name. Okay. And then, like, actually, every time I go and buy something, I'm paying kind of like
that is a regular
20% VAT on it.
That's a mainstream economic, kind of theory.
Well, yeah,
someone who is not in the tax net per se is still paying whatever the nominal VAT rate is over their goods, because they're spending all of their income into the real economy. It's definitely true.
Yeah. And I mean, and being poor, they don't have the option to save. Yeah. Oh,
okay. Let's move on to the next topic. I just like to
cardiac arrest unit.
No taxation without representation, and don't expect us to be riding around on horses naked anytime soon.
But you know what? We've been doing the show a long time. Can I just say something? We've been doing the show a long time, and we've danced around this essential question quite a lot. Peace bang the drum about their VAT policies constantly, but I'd love to maybe Dave do some research. Well, Marek, anyone on the Facebook group who wants to collect some data and maybe start a debate.
In other words, somebody else do the work.
Yeah, Marek.
Yeah, that means you, Marek. Yeah.
And accompany with some old photographs as usual.
Well, as Dr. Mike said, let's move on finally to another subject. Let's talk about ticket inspectors in Krakow, the people who check your tickets when you're on the buses and
canaries, as they are,
kind of public transport. Is this on this subject or a different one? Because you love to go back to the previous one.
Someone just today said to me that she's getting a bit scared because even though she has a ticket, she's seen a lot more inspectors lately. There's
a reason for that, which I'm going to get to in just a moment. Ooh. So the people who check your tickets on buses and trams, first of all, you have to know that the people who do this job, they don't work for the city. The way it works is that the city kind of sells the right to check tickets on buses and trams. They put it up for an auction, basically.
It's basically outsourcing. Lucky that they speak Polish.
And these companies bid for so they pay the city a flat fee yearly for the right to check tickets and then make money from that. So the company that has a contract is called Renoma. They've had the contract for a couple of years, and we just learned that they renewed the contract, which came into effect, February 1st, so just a couple of weeks ago. And we learned some interesting details from this new contract. First of all, Renoma, this company, is contractually obligated to carry out at least 27,000 checks per month. And they're obligated to write 6,000 tickets per month, at least. Right? So they assume that every month they're going to bust 6,000 people for writing a ticket. And they will. We also learned, I found this number the most interesting, at any given time, with the exception of the holiday season, that is from July to September, there are 26 ticket inspectors out there, which means 13 teams, because they travel in groups of 2, of course. So 13 teams spread out over the whole city doesn't really sound like a lot, does it? Yeah.
It's enough to keep you on your toes, let me tell you. I have great respect for these guys. They actually are so diligent in their job. They genuinely try and hit everybody in the cab when they come in. When they hit, they're like special agents when they hit the tram. It's
that like Mission Impossible soundtrack in the back of your mind going there. No, but it's like for me, it's for several weeks. Nobody checks me, and all of a sudden in the span of 2 weeks it's like 4 or 5 a week.
You see enough to keep you on your toes. I've always bought my card, my monthly card, right? So I've always loved the ticket inspector time, because I'm sitting there all smug doing my card, and I'm hoping, absolutely praying someone gets stung, just to see the look of disgust on their face. I've seen those guys haul like 50-year-old women off them trams. They are ruthless. They do their job efficiently. They do it well. And you know what? It's a disgrace to abuse this great public transport network we have by riding it for free. How dare you? How dare you, you freeloading bastards?
Wow, calm down, Dave. We also learned from the contract that half of the ticket inspectors are uniformed, and the contract specifies
and half of them are uninformed.
Certain aspects of their uniforms. They have to wear a white or a blue shirt, navy blue or black tie fixed with an elastic band. So that looks like a real tie, but it really isn't. And for the women,
but that's for security reasons.
For the female ticket inspectors, they can wear a skirt which has to be a minimum of 5 centimeters above the knees.
So I love.
Should that be maximum?
I was reading that as well, and
should be maximum.
They were trying to. They misworded.
It's your anti-leg agenda, John.
They were saying like the minimum length is 5 centimeters above the knee, which means that it can be that length or longer.
Lower. Oh, longer. Sorry.
But the way it was written, it's like it's like
a mini skirt or something.
It's like,
so I guess this leaves kind of an opportunity. If you get busted,
the imagination.
if you get busted for riding without a ticket, this is your kind of opportunity to kind of save yourself. Have a good look at their uniform, make sure they're in compliance, the 5 centimeters and all the rest of it. If they're not, maybe you have an out.
If you haven't got a ticket, carry a tape. If you haven't got a ticket, carry a tape measure with you.
Yeah,
they're never gonna beat what I call the short hop coin feeders. You ever see these guys? They get on, and they're only going 2 stops. So what they do is they patiently let everyone else on the in tram machine queue up, and they go last, and then they start slow feeding in a load.
You've just described half my trips ever on trams.
Small change, and they know that by the time they get there, they still won't have the ticket, and they just take the money and they jump off. I don't fucking see you.
Well, you can even get the ticket just as long as you don't validate it.
Or you can have like a pocket,
theoretically,
a pocket full of coins, but from different countries. So like it goes into the machine, it falls out. I don't know.
Oops.
I tried it again.
Where's my stop? God damn it! When can I get off this thing?
You see a lot of Krakow rides on a tram. If you don't use it regularly, it's very tempting, isn't it? Because it's only I only need to go. I can really shorten my distance if I just jump on for 2 stops. Yeah. But that means you're an asshole. I'm sorry. I'm not here. I don't pay my tram ticket.
The contract also says
your fucking theft.
The contract also says these people are not allowed to curse, not allowed to use bad words, bad language. And starting again February 1st,
I can't swear quietly.
They also carry these little terminal things where you can pay your fines with a credit card. So how convenient, right? You can get busted and pay for it straight away. So
and they're probably pissed off because no more bribes.
My very first day in Krakow, to my eternal shame, we bought a ticket, got on, and didn't validate them. And quite frankly, we were in this slow kind of process where we did actually see on the back in English that you have to validate the ticket. And we just had this arrogant assumption that if we did get caught, which we did 5 seconds after this conversation, that we were tourists and everyone would let us away with it. We just gotten into the city. This was we were backpacking across.
I don't have to pay this.
Yeah, we were literally like, we're not English, we're Irish. Let us away with it. And you know what he said? He fined us 100 zloty and he goes, it's in English on the back, so you have to pay. There are rules in Poland. And I always remember thinking, do you know what, lad? And I said to the lads, I said, well, he's got us bank the rights there, and we all do have 100 Z's in our pockets, so let's just pay the man and go to the pub. And I've never done it since, ever.
Speaking of
he taught me a lesson.
Speaking of respecting rules in Krakow, Dave, and Dr. Mike, and Josh, we learned that the city of Krakow has come up with another application for tourists. It's called... the application is part of a larger campaign called Respect Krakow. This is aimed at a certain kind of tourists, stag party assholes, I think, that like to, disrespect Krakow. Dr. Mike, what is this application all about, and what's the message it's supposed to communicate to tourists?
I know this is going to be obscure. Most people won't get it. But when I saw this Repect Krakow headline, I was just thinking of like Majchrowski riding around on a tricycle screaming, "Respect my authority."
That is the weirdest reference. I get it. I know what you're talking about.
I think we're all dating ourselves.
I did not know you were going to go that way. But okay.
But basically what happens is like when people fly into Krakow, so at the airport, on their phone, they'll get a message. And I'm not quite sure how this works, but they're saying it will pop up depending on where you are. So airport, train station. Informing you that, welcome to Krakow, but please respect Krakow. And there'll be information along the lines of, we don't allow disorderly behavior or conduct. You cannot scream in the middle of the night. This is a city where people actually live.
In other words, don't be an asshole.
Yeah, and, this is apparently they've...
They'll just take them as helpful suggestions of activities to get up to while they're in Krakow. Like, come on, you can't cure assholery with a fucking...
they've introduced this apparently in cities like Amsterdam, I believe.
And it has not worked at all.
Yeah, it's a joke.
But we need this to happen in Krakow. I mean, just the other week, you just hear these stories of I think it's like at least 3 or 4 people on every weekend night getting like stopped for pissing on the middle of the main square. And of course, these are foreigners because
I'm sure some Poles piss on the main square. Might have had a swash myself once.
On the subject of South Park, actually, I've just done a little kind of consultation with my my Polish language resource, and a cartman is a Wojak.
Sorry.
So, let me try to resurrect this podcast from the dead. Thanks, Josh. I think I'll just move on. I don't know what else.
Are you sick, you?
What? Yeah, a little bit. You didn't notice, huh?
You hadn't mentioned it.
A few months ago, we had a story about Auchan, how they introduced quiet shopping hours for the benefit of autistic people. We learned this week that Ikea, or possibly Ikea, is doing the same thing. At least a store here in Krakow is. They're going to have, on every Tuesday, they're going to dim the lights. They're going to have no music, no announcements, and they're going to have a cash register where people on the autism spectrum have priority.
Oh, I'd love to see people on the autism spectrum observe the same shoppers assembling their furniture. I mean, there's nothing peaceful or calming about it. I have to make my family leave the house when I swear at the fucking little wooden pegs.
And am I the only one who's a little cynical here? Do I think that probably Tuesdays are the day of the week where IKEA has its lowest sales anyway?
Quite possibly, Mike. Yeah, this is a real non-story. Why did you pick this one?
This is an easy way to get some cheap headlines and coverage on massive media outlets like us.
There's obviously some kind of possibility for kind of like groups of kind of like people on the spectrum to arrange a kind of like a rendezvous, like the following week, and kind of refer to each.
We should really.
I'd like to see you next.
I don't mean to make fun of them much, but people with autism, is going shopping really that a traumatic an experience?
I don't know. I don't have autism.
Dr. Mike, tell us something about this.
The definition, when it comes to like describing autism, has really changed in the last 10, 15 years. Autism was generally considered a mental handicap to the point of, intellectual cognitive dysfunction. Now it's become to the point where, social awkwardness is considered part of the spectrum. And I this is a touchy subject, but I think it's gotten to the point where right now people who have serious issues are lumped together with some people who just have a little trouble getting along. And I think it's really watered down the issue right now that, you can say, oh, I'm autistic, so you can get away with everything, and you're given special privileges and special entitlements, while people who actually do have problems and issues are kind of ignored and thrown and lumped into this larger group.
Okay, so dimming the lights a bit and turning off the music really help? I mean, I don't
know. You brought everybody.
Sounds like some.
I'll be honest. I generally, when I go to a store, I hate the loud, annoying music and the lights and the crowds. I just want to walk in there, buy something, and get out. And IKEA is not one of those places because it's a freaking maze, which is designed to confuse you and disorient you.
I find going there stressful under any circumstances.
I think I might have mentioned this before, but during a recent heat wave last summer in Ireland, some supermarkets allowed their shoppers to sleep in the kind of frozen sections overnight. People were having a sleeping bag. Actually, that might have been in the UK. Actually, but I might have got that wrong. But sleeping bag parties in the aisles of the. I've always loved on a hot summer's day walking into that big box Auchan in. I used to work out Bonarka. The big box Auchan in Bonarka. And it has a chill section, like a massive section of the store that's just like freezing, and it's just it used to be so refreshing. And it's just like How
do autistic people deal with
air conditioning,
frozen stuff in air conditioning, Dr. Mike?
I would not know.
I'm joking.
What's your beef with autism? You're so insensitive.
Oh, see, that's exactly the problem. If you criticize this thing, you're insensitive. No, I think this is
no. It's just John's just got a problem with Rain Man. It's kind of
it's like silent discos or something. Just these new fads.
Speaking of fads, actually, this is not a fad at all. That's not a segue at all. But Dr. Mike, tell us about. Well, first
is this
of all,
the worst news ever?
No, we've done. No, that was last week.
Boom! You weren't here. That's an insult.
Yeah, duh. Hello. Welcome to the program, Dave.
And the Irish guy's the last one to get it, so yeah.
So first of all, Dr. Mike, President Duda does a lot of campaigning, what we call retail politics, kissing babies, shaking hands. He loves to go to small, medium-sized towns, to the main square, and he takes 500 selfies in a day. Well, a couple of days ago, he had an encounter with what we might delicately call a enthusiastic fan. Tell us about what happened and what she's all about.
Yes, apparently there's this woman who on social media, on Twitter, on her Facebook, Instagram, has been posting these
for years.
Yeah, for the last 2 years.
Yolka Rojek.
How much she loves Duda, wants to be held by him, hug him and squeeze him.
What strong shoulders he looks like he has.
Here was her description of events. I kissed his neck, probably several times yesterday. I was so excited. I did not know what to say.
That's Dave's female voice.
Rather not let him go. But reality is cruel.
Sound like you're doing a bad Russian accent.
Yeah, or Borat or something. Yeah.
Basically,
how do you know she wasn't slightly Russian?
Anyway, she's and there's plenty of pictures online of her with both arms around him, really close, staring into his eyes. It's creepy.
Exactly. So 2 days ago, she actually got her wish, and it's kind of campaign rally.
KGB move, man. She's trying to dust him with a kind of lusty vibe and ruin him in the campaign. Putin's
she put some microchip in his clothes or something like that.
Yeah.
And the thing is, Duda, trying to be, hip with all the kids, has been more active on social media, on Twitter the last couple of months. So, in the middle of the night when people are tweeting him, he'll tweet back, and apparently she's tweeted a few times as well. He probably doesn't know.
Asking for trouble.
Exactly, and a lot of people responding oh no, this is definitely somebody being, from the opposition thrust into his arms to, start up a scandal. This is a non-issue. But then, the question arises this, no matter what political side of the spectrum you're on, he should be, as a public figure, president of the nation, should be protected. And how does this person
from a few kisses in the neck,
who's seems a little, quirky,
unhinged, I think is the word you're looking for.
Got to the point of physical contact with him. So
I suppose in the context of the American dance, etc. I mean, yeah, you're probably right, Mike. I probably shouldn't be so mirthful.
Stockholm level kind of stuff going on right now.
But then again, there's always been that element of politicians kind of say to themselves, "Well, look, if I'm a politician, I got to meet people, and you got to put yourself out there and."
There's also the question of security as well. At what point do you expect one of the big guys with the sunglasses to step in and do something?
Kind of what we've just been saying.
Oh, I wasn't paying attention.
She jumps and starts rubbing him and
I was staring at my screen for a second.
The security guy walks in no tongue.
You're really talking about that?
Did you also just say that Man City got kicked out of the Champions League?
Who cares? Last story today. Mercifully, I've been waiting for this. Going back to the subject of the trams, we talked about the ticketing inspectors earlier. We also learned this week that MPK, that's the authority that manages the buses and trams. They told us that over the last 2 weeks they've had a problem with some of their ticket machines, the ones that you find, that you find at the tram stops, with the touch screen where you buy tickets and whatnot. About 20 times over the last couple of weeks, those screens have been smeared with shit.
God, yeah.
Shit,
dude, no shit.
I'm not shitting you. It's shit 20 times.
It's out of order.
Now, dog shit, people shit, what kind of shit? We don't know. It's some kind of shit.
But they haven't tested the shit.
So they haven't tested. Well, maybe they did, but we don't know the results.
Someone needs to do a shit test.
Sorry,
interestingly enough,
is the shit real?
Interestingly enough, it's very real. Most of these ticket machines do not have any kind of monitoring. There's no camera there. So. Yeah, I know.
Fucking monitor.
So the shit bandit is anonymous. Is
The
still
shit
anonymous.
artist is a one-off. He's a fucking
So-
totally unique Banksy-like character.
20
He's the
times.
fucking, you know.
20 times. It's a lot of
You're
shit.
actually just happening every night in somewhere in Nova Huta right now, though.
Yeah. Somewhere he's
21.
preparing. He's having a huge burrito.
It's in the area.
Out for a night on the smear.
In the area, most of them, they're all in the area of Kapalanka and Grota Roveckiego, down there in Ruchai. Just on the other side of the Ruchai Tesco, basically. So this is the shit bandit is down there. He's very active. He or maybe she, we don't know. And so, keep an eye out and be careful before you start, punching away at the touch screen for your tickets, I guess.
And wash your hands before you eat anything.
You think it would be more taking place at Dvořák Governor, wouldn't it?
Oh, he's been waiting for that, hasn't he? Fantastic.
Well, no, I just made it up on the spur of the moment.
It's an absolutely must be one guy doing it though, right? I mean, there can't be multiple shit artists like copycats already. I mean,
Well, I think.
does he wear gloves?
No, I think that.
Put your profiler mind
Dave,
to
there was
work on
the
this.
first, there was the second, and then there was a follow up who I think is referred to as the.
I never ever know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
The George. Oh, fuck you. You're such a racist. Fucking.
Okay, I think.
I'd say tree whatever way I want, though, right?
Everybody, especially our listeners, have had enough. That's it for the news this week. Thanks for listening, everybody. Don't forget to go to our site, crackcast.pl. All of our back episodes, almost 200
I was
episodes
special
are there.
about the 33rd Irish style coming up.
Wait, let's hope not. And we'll see you next time on the news.